Next time you're out in the woods, stop for a second. Take a look around. There are hundreds of stories there that would surprise, maybe even amaze you. Welcome to Windows to the Wild. I'm Willem Lang. We're in Moultonborough, New Hampshire today, where over 100 years ago, a wealthy manufacturer named Thomas Plant built a castle. Well, castle's still here, but we'll get to that a little bit later. I brought you up to this mountaintop for another reason. There are over 5,000 acres that wrap around the castle in the clouds here. They're part of a patchwork that was protected and put together years ago, and that's the story we're here to talk about today. Now with me are Don Berry and Dave Mallard of the Lakes Region Conservation Trusts, which I can get right because he's got a patch on his chest. Now you guys, you're the president.
That's correct.
And you're the facilities person, right? The manager?
The Land and Stewardship Director.
Land and Stewardship Director, okay. And, okay, so you have a fairly large responsibility. How many thousand acres altogether?
We have conserved about 27,000, well, almost 28,000 acres around the Lakes region.
Yeah.
And this is our largest property and our probably most well-known property and most visited property. And was, in fact, the largest fundraising campaign for any property that we've ever done was for this property as well.
Is this kind of like, you know, how ice pulls water to itself? Now, do your properties pull other people in?
They bring people in, and once a property is conserved, it gives people the idea of thinking about conserving their land, particularly land that's nearby, that connects, so that we create a connection of conservation properties that are good for wildlife and recreation. So you're right, it does do that.
That's great.
Yeah.
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 Success breeds success.
Absolutely.
And you're doing fine.
Absolutely.
Before we take you out on the trails, let me show you where we are. Castle in the Clouds, one of the crown jewels of the Lakes region, sits near the northeast shore of Lake Winnipesaukee. There is no shortage of natural beauty here. Mountain ridges overlook lakes, lakes feed streams, streams nourish forests. What's not to like?
The Indian name for it almost sounds like it came from the Latin languages, aqueductum.
The Lakes Region Conservation Trust was created in 1979 to keep wilderness land open for public use. What exactly is the Lakes Region Conservation Trust?
Well, we're a nonprofit organization. We're what is called a land trust, which means that we acquire and own and maintain conservation land for protection of wildlife habitat. In this region, for recreation, it's a big piece of it. This is an area where hiking is very popular, lots of trails. And we own land, and we also protect land through what's called a conservation easement, which is a permanent legal restriction on the property. Right. And when we've conserved land, that means it's protected forever. It means that people will be able to enjoy the beauty of it, the recreational opportunities, the wildlife habitat, and the peacefulness of it forever.
Anyone who loves the outdoors should tip their hat to the people who help protect it. Throughout New Hampshire, there are nearly 2 million acres of land in public ownership or permanently protected. That's nearly 1/3 of the state's land area. Parcels are collected and saved in many ways. So who gives you the land?
Usually it's people who have had the land in their families for a long time, really cherish the land, want to see it kept the way that they have appreciated it through their families, through generations in some cases. And sometimes people donate their land to us, and other times they're not in a position to donate. They need to sell their land to us. And in that case, we do a fundraising campaign in the community or farther afield to raise funds to purchase the land.
Yeah. Ann Hackle and her husband donated a chunk of land to this property. The idea began brewing in her consciousness long before she ever laid eyes on this landscape.
It's something that I've been really involved with and cared about, I guess, ever since I was a kid. I grew up on 200 acres in Connecticut, and then when my father retired, he sold it, and it was developed. And I swore that one day I would own a chunk of land and I was going to save it. And when we moved to New Hampshire, we ended up buying 360 acres. We put a conservation easement with the Lakes Region Conservation Trust on 340 acres of that.
Nice.
360, and with public access. And I have found that enormously satisfying to come and be walking my trails with the dog, but come upon people who are equally enjoying it. And it's a source of great satisfaction.
Not only did Ann donate land, she gave of her time. Her past experience in real estate was put to good use.
It is steep and steady.
As a longtime board member, she was assigned a task: raise money to buy the original 5,000 acres that the castle sits on. You were around when the castle was procured.
I was more than around. I was.
I had heard that, so I thought
I was asked to head the fundraising to raise the $5.9 million it took to buy it, and that was came as a bit of a shock because I'd never raised money for anything before. I hadn't even sold Girl Scout cookies, but I found that my experience in real estate was helpful because I was used to talking to all manner of people. And in a sense, you're asking for money.
The property, including the castle, has been passed on from owner to owner over the past century. In the late 1990s, the owner put it all on the market. Developers waited, ready to snap it up. The Lakes Region Conservation Trust stepped in to save it.
I remember the meeting, the LRCT meeting, when we approved the purchase and sale agreement. It was up over what was then Mame's Restaurant in Meredith, and we approved the purchase and sale agreement.
That's $2 million a year you raised.
It was kind of scary. We had 3 years to raise the $5.9 million, and it was easy going at first, but that last $700,000 in the third year, it was scary.
Keep in mind that if the trust failed to raise the $5.9 million, the property would go to the next person in line, a developer.
if we failed, that was it. It went to this other purchaser.
There was interest from other buyers who would have either probably developed the property or at least would have closed it off completely to the public. But we were fortunate enough to be able to negotiate a deal with the owner to purchase the property for $5.9 million.
People who preserve land, whether donated, sold, or through a bequest, do so knowing it'll be saved forever.
When a family decides to donate land or to donate a conservation easement, it's a really serious, thoughtful decision for people to make to convey something that's been treasured by their family for years. And so there are usually lots of discussions, maybe taking a long time, involving multiple generations of the family to decide whether this is the right thing to do.
Well, can the next generation continue to use it the same way? Or?
They can, if they've donated the land to our organization so that we are the owner, they can continue to visit the land and enjoy the trails, enjoy the nature. If they've donated a conservation easement, what that means is that they are able to, that they continue to own it. They can continue to do forest management if they choose to do that, farming if they choose to do that. They are the owners. There are just some restrictions on it that prevent it from being developed.
Right.
But it stays in their family and remains as a place of natural beauty and natural value.
Like this.
Like this.
There's a lot of work that continues long after the money's raised and the land's secured. Dave Mallard knows that side of conservation. He's the Trust's Land and Stewardship Director.
Largely what we do is focus on public access and most of our properties are open to the public for use. So, and with over 19,000 acres that we own and keep open for the public, that's a lot of work. And so
The one that wouldn't be open would be by the owner's request?
So there are properties we protected with conservation easements on private property. And so that would be up to the owner to decide whether they want to open their property to the public. And several of them are and have trail networks, and that's terrific. And others are just protected for their conservation value.
Now, there's another benefit to land conservation that doesn't involve hiking, kayaking, or swimming. And the more land you patch together, the more corridors you have for wildlife to get back and forth.
Absolutely. And one of the, as we look at possible land conservation opportunities that people bring to us, or as we go out and look for opportunities, one of the key factors in our thinking is how does a particular piece of land connect with larger parcels of land that create big corridors that allow wildlife to move across the landscape.
Why is it so important that you conserve all this?
Well, I've mentioned wildlife habitat. That's obviously a key value. Recreational opportunities for people who live in this part of the state. That's also a key value. I think that individuals who've gotten involved in our organization and similar organizations, like myself, like Ann Hackle, we have long family roots in this part of New Hampshire. This is a part of the world that we really treasure. It means a lot to us to try to preserve the natural aspects of it that we have appreciated so long through our lives.
Yeah. So this must not be a developer's paradise here, exactly.
Well,
right?
there's a lot of development, and some development is always going to happen, and we have to strike a balance between appropriate development and conservation of beautiful places like this.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why there is development is because people want to live in such a wonderful
right.
place like
Yeah.
this that
Yeah.
has beautiful landscapes.
You love it
like,
to death.
Yes, yes, that's
I'm from the Adirondacks,
Yep.
where it's already happened.
Yes. Yeah.
We started the story outside the castle. As promised, we take you back to the place and back in time. Thomas Plant
Yes.
must have been a bit of a character.
He was in the shoe industry in Boston, and he assembled a lot of land, including this 5,000 plus acres that we now have as conserved land, but even more land extending all the way down to Lake Winnipesaukee. And his purchase took place over several years in the 1910, 11, 12, that era, and then the castle was built in 1913, 1914.
He's described as being very tough. He's described sometimes as being very rough. And yet others say that he was absolutely delightful socially. I think, like many self-made men, he had many sides to his persona. And I think he was a character. He just was a good businessman. I mean, he knew how to make money, but then he didn't really know how to steward money. And he spent money like a drunken sailor on the castle, and then he went on to build the old folks' home in Bath in 1916, and then in 1921 he built the Bald Peak Colony Club and 9 cottages, which he hoped to sell to friends. In the end, he was kind of tapped out.
Broke, yeah. Before the Plants moved onto the property, it was owned by B.F. Shaw. He bought 350 acres here and built a summer estate.
The B.F. Shaw, who I mentioned, was someone who welcomed people from the community to walk within his acres and acres of woodlands. And Plant was not of that same mind. Plant did not have a good relationship with the local folks, and didn't want any local people trespassing on his property. So Plant was not, I don't think, a beloved figure in town, and I think B.F. Shaw before him,
like King John, not a good man.
Yeah.
The mansion that Tom and Olive Plant had built is now open to the public. There's history in nearly every room. For their time, they enjoyed futuristic amenities, central vacuum, refrigeration, and a home-wide interphone system. The architect made an effort to blend the mansion in with the natural setting. Restoration of the castle began in 2006, led by the Castle Restoration Society.
The original donors, about 2,000 of them, that stepped up to the actual purchase of the castle property, when I came to finding money to restore the buildings, all of a sudden, that number dwindled down to something like 500, because I think that people don't value preservation in the same way that they value conservation. And so I think we need to do a much better job promoting conservation. And I think that that's why the association of the Castle Preservation Society and the LRCT is such a perfect example of both sides being equally represented, and the importance of that being equally represented. And so the two of us have a really wonderful relationship stewarding this extraordinary property.
Wherever I go, I look around for stories that are written in the pages of the landscape's ancient history. It's geology. Now, the geology of this place is interesting because one, it's different, and two, you can see it.
Yeah.
You know, which is often the big problem with geology. You can't really get at it, but this is
Right.
what's called a ring dike, right?
That's correct. The whole Ossipee Mountain Range, which is, you know, circular in formation, is what you described as what you can see
Yeah.
at a large scale.
Yeah.
And it was it was formed as a volcano, which then collapsed in on itself.
Yeah.
And caused that big circular formation that's the Ossipee Mountain Range.
Apparently from space, it's almost perfectly circular.
Yeah.
It's one of the beauties.
And there's other occurrences of that in the landscape. Some of the islands on the lake were smaller ring dikes, but now you're just able to see the islands because of the water.
Huh. That's neat. So you ever geologize around here with your
A little
hammer?
bit. There's a place on the Bald Knob Cutoff Trail
Yeah.
that comes to an outcrop of some of the columnar joining, which was the intrusion of what do you call it?
Basalt.
Basalt, yes.
Yeah.
And you can actually see the columns that are formed in the hexagonal formations, and they break off and they're lying there on the ground. We have a little display there that you can walk up and explains the formation, and it's a nice spot to
It's the
visit.
coast of Ireland.
Yeah.
Where they had the giant steps. Huh. Well, I wish I had more time to walk around it, but
Takes a long time. It's a big property. There's a lot to see. Between the Brook Walk and the geology and the 5 summits, and it's I've been maintaining the trails here for 8 years now, and there's still places on the property that I haven't been to.
Really?
Well, off trail.
But you must be outside most of the time then, eh?
This time of year.
Yeah.
This is our field season.
Yeah.
Winter time is a lot of prep time, planning, working on management plans.
Several years after the construction of Plant's Castle began, the 1918 flu pandemic spread around the world with deadly force. A century later, people find some relief from today's pandemic in places like this.
We, particularly in connection with this property, but with all of our properties this spring, have seen how important these properties are as people have been kept at home because of the pandemic and are eager to have some enjoyment and get some fresh air. We've had more use than ever of these trails on this property and other properties because people are welcome so much the opportunity to get outside. We've just seen how much people really appreciate properties like this spring because they welcome having these opportunities right in their backyard, really.
Well, we've arrived at the foot of the valley. pretty much at the Falls of Song, and everybody's still intact, as you can see. And we're going to have to end it here with a great big thank you to all of you for coming with us and telling us about this beautiful place. Thank you so much. So with that, I will bid you a fond adieu. I'm Willem Lang and hope to see you again on Windows to the Wild. Support for the production of Windows to the Wild is provided by the Alice J. Reen Charitable Trust, the Fuller Foundation, the Gilbert Verney Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.